now my partner Greg Anthony suggesting that he someday will break Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record and wind up with more points than anybody in history. How you figure that, partner? Well,
that was a video from 2004 where Greg Anthony maybe foolishly predicted LeBron James to break Kareem's all-time scoring record one day. LeBron was 20 years old at the time. Well, this season, nearly 20 years after that prediction was made, LeBron achieved that seemingly untouchable record. That prediction by Greg Anthony is one of the best predictions any analyst has ever made about the NBA. But later on in this video, I will talk about a prediction that might top it. One coach said Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player of all time before MJ even played a single NBA game. Here are 6 times where NBA analysts, players, or personnel predicted the future. This first one was more of a statement than a prediction, and it was made by Mark Jackson, head coach of the Golden State Warriors in 2013. The 2012-13 season was the first winning season the Warriors had since they drafted Steph Curry in 2009. A 24-year-old Steph led the team in scoring at about 23 a game, and a 22-year-old second-year Klay Thompson was third in scoring at just under 17 a game. They earned a 6th seed in the Western Conference and a first-round matchup with the Nuggets, who were led by Ty Lawson, Danilo Gallinari, and Andre Iguodala at the time. The Warriors lost game 1 of that series, and almost nobody gave them any chance to mount any kind of comeback. But in game 2, the Warriors exploded for 131 points and a 14-point victory. Curry scored 30 and knocked down 4 threes, and Klay knocked down 5 of 6 from behind the arc. And following the first playoff win for the Warriors in almost 6 years, Mark Jackson made a very bold statement about his young backcourt. In my opinion, they're the greatest shooting backcourt in the history of the game. Most people that heard that quote probably thought it was completely hyperbolic, but Jackson was 100% serious. Mark Jackson saw the vision before anyone else did. Jackson ended up being replaced by Steve Kerr just 1 year later. Steph and Klay went on to win 4 championships, becoming not only the best shooting backcourt ever, but arguably the best all-around backcourt of all time. Next up, let's talk about a guy that you probably wouldn't expect to see on this list, Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless has made a career out of saying some of the most outlandish takes on TV. He has been wrong so many times that the Freezing Cold Takes Twitter account had to put a limit on exposing him. But you know what they say, a broken clock is right 2 times a day. And on November 25th, 2015, Skip made a genius prediction. He tweeted this: the Warriors were off to a hot start and Skip called his shot. He predicted they would break the Bulls record for wins in a single season. And not only did the Warriors go on to break the record, they finished with a record of exactly 73-9. Again, a bold prediction paid off pretty big. But I don't know if anything was more bold than this. This is a picture of a tattoo Dallas Mavericks guard Jason Terry got during the preseason of the 2010-2011 season. We've been shown time and time again that something like this is almost always a bad idea. And it's not like the Mavericks were the favorites to win the title that year. On one power ranking going into that season, they were ranked 13th. 13th in the power rankings heading into this current season was the Toronto Raptors. I simply don't know what possessed Terry to get this tattooed, but he must have felt something. And that next June, they were crowned champions over the Miami Heat, a meltdown that left a permanent stain on the great legacy of LeBron James. But Jason Terry wasn't the only one that predicted that Mavericks championship. This is a Facebook post that I made on May 8th, 2011. I was 10 years old at the time. The Mavericks had just won their first round series. I called my shot. Next up, let's talk about this man right here, Brian Windhorst, who had one of the most mysterious and legendary TV monologues in recent memory last summer.
Why would the Jazz do that?
It was in the midst of the offseason with trades and free agency in full effect. Brian Windhorst set the NBA world on fire with this monologue, where he repeatedly said, "What's going on in Utah?"
Why? What's going on in Utah?
He questioned why Utah would trade Royce O'Neal, a great 3-and-D player, to the Brooklyn Nets for a draft pick. Everyone at that table was very confused, hanging on to every word that he was saying. They, like the rest of the NBA community, was asking, what is happening in Utah. Brian knew what was about to go down, but nobody else did. Later that week, Utah sent Rudy Gobert to the Minnesota Timberwolves in a blockbuster trade, and later in the offseason, they shipped off Donovan Mitchell to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Next up, we got the wild prediction I mentioned in the intro. Greg Anthony saying that LeBron James would break the scoring record in just his second NBA season.
How you figure that, buddy?
Well, if you look at it, if he gets 25 a game for the rest of his career, you figure he's going to play another 13, 14 years. And I would assume in a few of those years, he's probably going to get more than 25. He's going to do it just based on sheer longevity.
At that time, LeBron had scored 3,062 career points, which means he still needed to score 35,325 more points to break Kareem's record. From that point on, LeBron needed to average 25 points a game for 1,413 more games. That's every game for about 17 seasons. And as much hype as LeBron received in his first few years in the NBA, the odds of that prediction coming true were astronomically low. Finally, we got a statement made by Bobby Knight that is mind-blowing to look back on. In this interview, legendary Hall of Fame coach Bobby Knight was asked about Michael Jordan, and he said this.
He's the best athlete, he's one of the best competitors, he's one of the most skilled players, and that to me makes him the best basketball player that I've ever seen play.
The best basketball player he has ever seen play. Bobby Knight essentially called Michael Jordan the GOAT, but the unbelievable thing about that statement was Michael Jordan had not played an NBA game yet. Roy Williams told another story about Bobby Knight and Michael Jordan. Knight was the head coach of the USA Olympic basketball team in 1984. When they started practicing, Jordan had yet to be drafted, but he was selected to compete for a roster spot. And as the story goes, before Jordan showed up, Knight didn't like him. After the first day, Knight knew he would make the team. After the second day, he knew Jordan was going to start on that team. And after the third day, he knew Jordan was the greatest player ever. Knight was so convinced Jordan was going to be great that he begged the Blazers to not pass on him in the draft. A Blazers executive told Knight, "We need a center, and we already have Clyde Drexler." Knight responded by saying, "Play Jordan at center. He'll be the best center ever." Bobby Knight's intuition about Michael Jordan was absolutely right. Taking Sam Bowie over MJ is one of the greatest draft mistakes of all time. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you check out the one where I talk about 7 times NBA draft experts were dead wrong. In this video, I talked about everyone that was right. In that video, I exposed a few people. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far, make sure you drop a comment. I'll respond to each and every one of your comments, and subscribe for more basketball content. We are trying to take over basketball YouTube. We'll see you in the next video.